There's a quiet truth most people never say out loud. Many don't realize until the very end of their life that they've spent too much of it in silence, feeling forgotten. You might not see it clearly, but it shows. In the eyes of a father sitting alone on his porch. In the sigh of a mother who hasn't received a call in weeks. But here's the beautiful part. It doesn't have to stay that way. In this video, I want to tell you a story, one that might feel like your own, about a man who thought his life was over, until a simple ritual changed everything. Noel was a 75-year-old man living in a quiet village, far away from the noise and rush of the city. He had once been a devoted husband, a loving father, and believed that the best years of his life were already behind him. His children had grown up, busy with their own lives, and calls had become fewer over time. Noel was still healthy enough to tend his garden, start a fire, and cook for himself. But deep inside, there was an emptiness, a quiet question that echoed every morning as he opened his eyes. What am I still living for? One cool afternoon, while walking through the familiar woods behind his house, Noel unexpectedly came across a woman he had never met before. She looked to be in her early 60s, with soft silver hair and eyes that radiated calmness and warmth. Her name was Elena. "I'm sorry if this sounds odd," Noel said, almost without thinking, "but you seem at peace. How do you do it?" Elena smiled. "I don't have much," she replied gently. "Just a small evening ritual that helps me live each day with a lighter heart." She went on to share with Noel a simple practice she called a mind-cleansing ritual. Every evening before bed, she would light a candle, pour a glass of clean water, and sit quietly. Staring into the flame, she would whisper, "Let all heavy things leave me. Let only the good remain." Then she would hold the glass and say, "May this water give me strength and peace." Finally, she'd take 3 small sips. That was all. Noel listened, skeptical but intrigued. There was something in her voice, in her presence, that stirred a quiet curiosity inside him. That night, he followed her instructions exactly. The room was still. The only sound was the faint flicker of the candle flame. He repeated Elena's words and sipped the water, one small mouthful at a time. When it was over, he couldn't quite explain the feeling. It wasn't a miracle, but there was a quiet sense of release, like something old and heavy had gently loosened its grip on his heart. It wasn't magic, but it was a beginning. The next morning, Noel woke up earlier than usual. Nothing extraordinary had happened. The sky was still quiet. Soft sunlight streamed through his old window like any other day, but something felt different inside him. There was a lightness in his chest, a subtle calm, as if the usual weight on his mind had gently lifted. He went for a walk, his usual route through the woods, but for the first time in a long while he started to notice the way sunlight filtered through the leaves, the sound of birds chirping high above, the breeze brushing gently across his face, almost like a whisper. And in that quiet moment, he remembered Eleanor's words. Peace doesn't come from the outside. It begins the moment you become present with yourself. That evening, he repeated the ritual again and again the next night. By the 3rd day, as he sat before the candle's gentle flicker, he realized something surprising. He was looking forward to it. As if his body and mind had come to understand this wasn't just a routine, it was a place of return. One day, walking through the woods again, Noel found Elena and shared how he'd been feeling. "Is there a way," he asked, "to hold on to this feeling, even when the days feel noisy or lonely?" Elena nodded. "Peace needs nourishment," she said. "You can't wait for it, you cultivate it, and the best way to feed it is with gratitude." She encouraged him. After his nightly ritual with the candle and water, he should take a few quiet minutes to remember 3 small things he was grateful for that day. It didn't have to be profound. A warm meal, a wave from a neighbor, the sun rising without fail. Noel gave it a try. At first he sat in silence, struggling to think of anything that felt worth writing down. But eventually he scribbled. 1. I still have the strength to walk through the woods. 2. My home is warm. 3. I slept well last night. Nothing grand, but enough to begin shifting the way he saw tomorrow. What surprised him most was how, within just a week, his mood began to change. The little things felt brighter. He started to smile more. His eyes softened. And inside him, something had begun to bloom, like a small flower, pushing its way through soil that had long been hardened by time. As the days went by, something remarkable began to happen. Noel's mornings no longer felt heavy. His steps became lighter. He started getting up earlier, taking longer walks, tending to his garden with new energy, and most importantly, he began to truly care for himself. I want to live longer, he thought one morning. But not just live. I want it to matter. He began eating more mindfully, taking time to breathe deeply among the trees and observing his emotions, something he had never done before. These weren't drastic changes, but they were consistent, and slowly they gave rise to a different version of Noel, calmer, clearer, and warmer. One day, while walking through the woods again, Eleanor appeared beside him and said, "You look brighter than when we first met. But remember, real change takes time and patience." She then shared with him another simple yet powerful habit. Each morning, she said, when you look in the mirror, say these 3 things aloud. I am valuable. I am worthy. I am capable. It might feel strange at first, but if you say them long enough, your mind will start to believe, and your heart will begin to feel it. Noel gave it a try. At first it felt awkward, even silly to say such things out loud while staring at his own reflection, but he stuck with it. And then something began to shift. Soon, when he looked in the mirror, he no longer saw a lonely old man. He saw someone seasoned by life, someone wise, someone who still had something to give, and that changed everything. People began to notice. Neighbors invited him over for tea more often. His grandchildren, once too busy to call, started reaching out just to chat. No one said it outright, but something in Noel had changed, and it drew people in. It wasn't that he started giving big speeches or doing anything grand. It was simply the energy he carried, present, calm, warm, like a quiet flame glowing in a noisy world. And in that quiet realization, Noel finally understood. When you change within, the world begins to shift around you. I don't need to wait to be saved. I just need to begin, right here. One quiet morning, as Noel sat in his usual wooden chair on the front porch, he noticed a young man walking slowly past the village gate. His face was downcast, shoulders slumped, and his eyes seemed to carry the weight of a sky full of sorrow. Without thinking too much, Noel stood up, walked toward him, and gently asked, "Are you all right, son?" The young man hesitated, then shook his head. He shared that he had recently lost his job, and everything in his life felt like it was falling apart. "I feel empty," he said. "I don't even know why I'm still here." Noel listened without interrupting. And when the young man finished, Noel responded with a simple sentence. "Start with gratitude. Just one thing, each day." The young man looked puzzled. "Gratitude? For what? I've got nothing." Noel smiled softly. "You have 2 legs that brought you here. You have a new day ahead of you. That's already 2 things." Then he shared his story, the dark days, the small ritual with the candle and the water, the practice of writing down 3 things he was grateful for every night. Nothing big, but those small things saved him. The young man nodded. They agreed to meet again soon. A few days later, he returned. His face still carried traces of worry, but his eyes held a flicker of light. I started a gratitude journal, he said. It was hard at first.
But now, I feel lighter. Not everything has changed, but inside me, something's different.
Noel stayed quiet, then gave a gentle nod. He knew the seed had been planted. And at that moment, Noel realized his story wasn't just his anymore. It could become a light for others, especially those who had forgotten what hope feels like. Little by little, more people from the village came to him. They asked, "How do I get through the emptiness? What do I do when I feel like I have no worth? Where do I even begin to find myself again?" And Noel always gave the same answer. Begin with the smallest thing, a sip of water, a candlelight. 3 things you're grateful for. From there, everything begins to shift. Word of Noel's healing ritual spread quickly through the village, but it wasn't shared as a myth or mystery. It was passed along through the glowing eyes of people who used to look tired, through the quiet joy of those who had long carried sadness in silence. One elderly woman, who had kept to herself for years, came to Noel and softly asked, "I heard you helped a young man find hope again. I'm not young anymore, but do you think I could start over too?" Noel didn't hesitate. "As long as we're still breathing," he said gently, "we can begin again." And slowly, one by one, people who once thought their lives were already written began to light a small flame within themselves. Noel started inviting them to his home every Saturday evening. There were no special seats, no grand ceremonies, just a candle in the center of the table, a pitcher of water, and people brave enough to bring their stories. They called it the Circle of Wisdom. Each gathering began with a quiet moment, a simple word of thanks, and sometimes a silent tear. But then came something even more powerful: listening, without judgment, without rushing. One woman shared how writing 3 small gratitudes each night helped her survive the loneliness of losing her husband. Another man spoke of how sitting under a tree for just 5 minutes each morning made him feel alive again. No one felt alone anymore. They began to realize, we are not isolated souls. We've just forgotten how much light we can offer one another. Then something beautiful happened. People from nearby villages began to show up. They heard about the circle through relatives, through a quiet article written by a journalist who had visited Noel's town, and even through handwritten letters from those Noel had once helped. People began to believe again in the power of simplicity, in candlelight, in water, in words of gratitude, and in being truly seen by another soul. One evening, Noel stood by his window, watching the soft glow of the candle inside the room, where voices whispered, stories flowed, and hearts opened. He didn't say a word. He simply smiled, because he understood. The small flame he once lit within himself had become a light for many. That winter, the snow fell heavier than usual, but inside the small village no one felt cold. In home after home, little candles were lit each night. Some placed them by their windows, others beside a quiet corner in the kitchen. Each flame was a silent reminder that life, despite everything, still mattered. Noel saw it all. He was no longer just an old man living quietly on the edge of life. He had become a beacon, not through loud words or big gestures, but through small, steady acts of kindness, day after day. One evening, Elena visited him. They sat together by the fire, the room filled with the warm scent of pine and tea. She asked softly, "Do you feel at peace with your life now?" Noel smiled. There was a quiet light in his eyes, the kind that comes from deep, earned peace. "When I was younger," he said, "I thought purpose meant doing something big, but now I know. Sometimes all it takes is doing one small thing, again and again, with your whole heart." "That's enough." Eleanor nodded gently. Then she shared one last truth. Kindness never disappears. It always leaves a mark on someone's heart, and in the way the world quietly keeps turning. After that day, Noel began a new habit. Every morning, he chose one intentional act of kindness. Some days, it was helping a neighbor start a fire. Other days, he left a basket of bread at the doorstep of someone who lived alone. No one asked him to, but he did it, because he understood now. When we give, we don't become emptier, we become fuller, in a way the soul remembers. Time passed. One afternoon, a child from the village looked up at him and asked, "Grandpa Noel, how do you know the right way to live?" Noel paused. He gently placed a hand on the boy's head, smiled and said, "Start with a glass of water, a quiet candle, and a heart willing to be grateful." That was his legacy. Not wealth, not fame, but a trail of quiet moments that had softened pain, brought light into dark places, and reminded people again and again that life still matters when we live it with gratitude and kindness. If this story touched something in you, if it made you pause, reflect, or even breathe a little deeper, then maybe, just maybe, it's time to begin your own quiet transformation. Not tomorrow, not next year, tonight. Light a candle, pour a glass of water, and whisper to yourself, "Let all the heaviness leave. Let the good remain." Then, leave a comment below and tell us, what is one small thing you feel grateful for right now? And if you believe others need to hear this story too, a friend, a parent, a grandparent, share it with them. You never know whose life might quietly begin to change. And if you'd like more stories that heal, inspire, and guide you back to what truly matters, subscribe to the channel. We light candles here, one soul at a time.